this going. All right, you're good to go.
All right, Vice President Schaefer, we're ready to go.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call our study session for is it the 13th of July? And if we'll, Madam Clerk, if you could start with the roll call, please.
Sure. Dr. Brett Eccles.
Here.
Dr. Arthur Perry.
Here.
Secretary Arlene Schaefer.
Here.
Vice President Mike Schaefer.
Here.
President Bob Uten.
Who is scheduled to join us later, I believe.
Thank you.
All right, item B, public comments. This is the time set aside for members in the audience to make comments within our jurisdiction, items that are not listed on the agenda. Comments limited to 4 minutes. Madam Clerk?
I do not see any hands raised at this time, Mr. Vice President.
Very good. Then we'll move to items of study. Receive and file the code enforcement report. Scott, is that you or Dave taking that right off?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'll introduce to the board and the public our interim code enforcement officer, David Griffin. He has graciously accepted to really take on dual roles within the district. He is currently the facility maintenance worker at the district, where he's responsible for maintaining both HQ and the yard. A few years back, he did receive some training from Ed Roberts on code enforcement, where he did some ride-alongs with Ed. So he was very familiar of our operations at code enforcement and the duty of the code enforcement officer. So when Ed resigned, we were very fortunate to have David, and gracious enough to have David accept the responsibility of taking on dual roles. So David is right now our interim code enforcement officer until we make further decision on this position. And so it's my pleasure to introduce you to David Griffin, and he's going to give you this month's report.
David, it's the first time I've seen you in glasses. You look great in glasses, buddy.
Well, thank you, sir, very much. I appreciate that. And I want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to, take over this challenge. It's an honor. So again, I appreciate the looking to me to, fill this position until other decisions are made. My code enforcement for a report for the month of June. The report summarizes major points for 3 ordinance enforcement topics covering scavenging, graffiti, and trash container enforcement. For the month of June, the CMSD interim code enforcement officer focused his efforts on patrols in various parts of the community. The goal is to identify and deter instances of scavenging and residential trash carts left within the public view. In the month of June, the district saw a number of complaints filed with the CMSD interim code enforcement staff regarding scavenging activity in the city. As with most scavenging complaints, the alleged violations take place in early morning hours. In order to address resident concerns, the interim code enforcement officer is patrolling streets by 6:30 a.m. I had 7 proactive scavenging investigations. You see within the report, those locations are marked. There were more in the, say, west side. There were 3 on the east side, and then 1 on the north end of town, up there by Director Eccles district. Saw no graffiti on any trash carts in the month of June. And that will finalize the report. You see a page of trash container enforcement with those locations stated in there. I was looking at a previous study session, and President Newton did ask for an ordinance to be put into the reports. I will implement that with staff before the next report is due. Any questions for the code enforcement officer at this time?
I had a comment. David, on the College Park part, just recently seen scavenging going on.
Okay,
And so you might check it out, on a Wednesday morning of what's going on. Because they were just added at the trash can.
yeah, I will look into that. Absolutely. Thank you for the tip.
Yeah, especially on Princeton.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, David, this is Mike. Congratulations. Good report. Nice job for your maiden voyage. I have a comment about the container enforcement. I guess I'll direct this to Gina and Nolani more. Every instance that we have listed is carts in public view. Could we maybe take a look at a future newsletter giving people an idea about where they should store their carts? I know I can drive down any street right now in Costa Mesa and probably find carts that are sitting up by garages or, there is a lot of public view. I don't want to call them, well, they are violations, but could we look at a future newsletter article that addresses where people should store their carts?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Great.
Good comment.
Thank you.
Good comment.
Other questions for David this morning from anyone? Anyone from the public, Nolani, that wanted to speak on this?
I just want to wish David lots of luck because I know he's going to do a great job. He's been doing a great job for us, so that means a lot.
I
Absolutely.
do not see any hands raised, Mr. Vice President.
Okay. Then let's move to item D. Item D. Item 2.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So this is an item being returned to the board after a discussion on the June 28th Board of Directors meeting. The board was discussing possibly changing the time of the study session, and it appeared like the majority of the board like 8 o'clock in the morning and directed staff to look into that, see if it had any impact on us. And the answer is no, it would not impact staff. 8 o'clock in the morning, because we are all here at HQ by 7 o'clock in the morning. So 8 o'clock will be fine for staff. We also believe that having the meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning might increase participation in your study session meetings, because members of the public might want to join in the meeting before they go off to work. So there's that possible improvement. So tonight we're just today we're looking for direction from the board if you want to officially change the meeting time to 8 o'clock. And by doing that, you would have staff report back on July 26th, and we'll present a resolution for you to adopt to officially change the time to 8 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you, Scott. Questions for staff?
Mr. Chair, I had
Yes.
a question. I had a comment. ISDOC does 7:30, Waco does 7:30, and 8 o'clock is nothing. That's fine. So I'm in favor of it. I don't know, do we have to have a motion for this? Or do you just automatically do it, Scott?
Well, I think it'd be good for the record if we have some documentation that the board officially approved it. So if you're okay, I'd bring this back on July 26th with a resolution for the board to adopt.
Great. I'd like to see that.
Mr. Vice President,
Go.
since I kind of started this conversation, I just wanted to say I appreciate the willingness to entertain it. And I think the 8 o'clock would be beneficial for the reasons laid out in the staff report in our previous conversation last meeting. Hopefully everyone is okay with this, and I think it would make sense. And for those getting ready at home, instead of putting on Good Day LA, they can put on the Costa Mesa Sanitary District study session. So I too would support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. I'm going to have to switch from decaf to caffeinated coffee other than that. But I agree with Arlene. It seems like most of the meetings that we go to are earlier than what we do. So I'm glad that it doesn't affect staff, and I appreciate you guys looking into that. So other comments? Otherwise, we'll have that resolution brought to the July board meeting, right, Scott?
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments? Terrific. Now let's go to item 3.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So this was, so as you know, back on June 8th, the board of directors denied CNR's environmental service request for an annual rate adjustment. The board did suggest bringing this item back in 6 months for consideration. And so on the suggestion of a couple of board members of creating some measurements that will help the board engage with CNR to determine if their service levels are improving. So attached to your staff report are several measurements that staff has developed, and we sent those measurements over to CRNR for their comments and review. They did not have any comments, so they are okay with, they approve these performance measurements. So we're presenting to you today for your comments and suggestions. We're also presenting this to the CAC for tomorrow night on their suggestions. And once we receive all those, and if you're okay with these measurements, we'll use them as benchmarks for engaging or evaluating their performance in the next 6 months. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Scott. Questions for staff?
Yes, on number 7, do you think we can use the Newport Beach transfer stations? Because we've been talking about that for 4 or 5 years.
I know, and that's, they have, that's what I kind of want to hold their feet to the fire on this one, and at least have to start having that discussion. I've had discussions with city officials. They're okay with it. CRNR seems to be okay with it. There seems to be some kind of a, the city of Newport Beach and CRNR needs to come to an agreement with scales. I think that's the
Right.
issues over at the yards, the scales.
Yeah.
So, and again, I think you've heard Mike from CRNR reiterate their commitment to looking into this. So we want to, hopefully we can at least get some communications on where they are in this process.
So we're just looking for an update to see if that's possible then.
Yes, we just want some continued updates on this, correct?
Yeah, we thought that was a great idea
Yeah,
when we first started discussing it.
absolutely.
You're right. Hey, Scott, can you take a look at Mr. Silva's letter to us?
I think it's an attachment. Can you pull that up, Nolani? Okay.
Item number 6. Can you, I'm not sure what the Friday 03 route, in his number 6 is that been our biggest problem, the Friday route?
It's, I gotta look at what the 03 route is. I can't remember off the top of my head. I know there's, we identified in CNR's performance evaluation, certain routes that have heavy loads. Typically it's usually the Monday route that we're experiencing a lot of heavy loads. So I'll have to look at what the Friday one meant, but
Okay.
basically we're saying that, you know, we're encouraging CNR, whatever route it is, that they need to reduce their loads.
Okay. And then in his bullet point number 7, the future, you know, we value our partnership, and I appreciate him saying that as well. The transition to a 3-cart system, we keep sort of skirting around that. We haven't really dug into it as a board. Is that something you want the ad hoc solid waste committee to start with? Where are we going with the 3-cart system?
Yes, correct. Well, the first thing is we are just putting the finishing touches on our RFP for our community survey, our citizen survey. And we are going to go out and survey 1,000 residents. And one of the key questions we're going to ask on that survey is, does the community support a 3-cart system? And so with that, and then we'll bring that information back to the board. I believe that will be very helpful in determination what direction you want to go. It's possible the community might not want to go 3-cart system. And if that's the case, then we just try to do the best we can to comply with SB 1383 with a 2-cart system. But I think that's the first thing we need to do is engage with the residents, what they think of the 3-cart system. So we're hoping to release that RFP this Friday, by this week. And then I'm hoping to give the results back to the board in November. And so then we can go from there. But yes, the ad hoc committee is also scheduled for, I think, next week or 2 weeks.
I think so, yeah.
And we can start discussing some preliminary ideas on a 3-cart system, or at least some questions we can ask on the survey. Also kind of start digging in on the SB 1383. So we are starting to have that ad hoc committee meet on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think our transition to the organic 2-carts actually went pretty well. I mean, you remember some of those meetings, we had people that spoke about, you know, they have second homes in wherever, and they have 3-carts. And so we had some good lessons out of the transition to the organic cart. So I think we need to keep that in mind.
Well, and if you remember, it all started with the survey. right? We surveyed the 1,000 residents, and the majority of them said they want the organics program. So that gave us the ammunition. Okay, let's move forward. Let's be the first ones to go into this program because our residents want it. And so that's the same philosophy we're taking on the 3-cart system. Let's engage with our residents first before we make that critical decision.
Yeah. The other points in numbers is bullet point 7. He talked about utilizing RFI and GIS. We for a long time we've asked to have GPS put on the trucks. Are they softening their position on that a little bit?
Well, I think that's a little different. GIS and GPS are 2 different things.
I understand that, but I still think if we could use GPS on the carts, we don't need to let that totally go.
Well, I agree, but again, we really haven't brought up that discussion because they were really firm on their position not to share that information with us.
Okay, and then what is China Sword?
That is the China Sword. So that is the decision that the China made. That's what really flipped the recycling market upside down, because China refused to accept all the recyclables because they were so contaminated.
Okay.
So what China said is that we're only going to basically accept like 0.05% of contaminated material. So in other words, we have to make sure our recyclables are clean. We have to encourage residents to rinse out the recyclables, for China to accept it. And so that's what the China Sword is. It flipped the recycling market upside down.
I thought that.
Mike, I think we should meet and talk with CRNR about the 3-cart system before we craft the questions for the survey. We could craft, we will craft them either way. But if it's the only thing that can get us to be 1383 compliant, and CRR can convince us of that, or it'll be a substantial part that may influence how we ask the questions.
Yeah, I agree, Bob. I agree. Also with that, it's all I will relinquish control of the meeting to our esteemed president at this point.
I have a
Mr.
question,
President,
Bob. I have a comment.
I do
Oh,
too.
go ahead, Art.
I think that, the solid waste ad hoc committee could be the one meeting with CRNR prior to us putting out a letter. It's because you guys have a little bit more background. Just a thought for you. Just the two of the ad hoc committee members, meet with them.
Do I have it?
Or the ad hoc committee.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, the ad hoc committee, because you guys have the solid waste committee.
Well, I'm sorry I'm late. I went to a doctor's appointment and they were 45 minutes late getting me in there, but they were quickly able to determine I wasn't pregnant. So that's a big relief. Anyway, I'm sorry I missed the initial part of this discussion, but what is the letter that you're talking about?
It was the attachment from Mike Silva to item.
I read that letter, but
that's what I was referring to.
Okay, now I'm with you. So it isn't a letter that we were going to write.
No.
Yeah,
I had some questions on that letter is what it was.
Yeah.
I had a comment when I can make a comment.
Arlene, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I really do appreciate this letter. I'm so happy to hear us communicating a lot better with everything that's being done and the performance. But I'm going to throw this out just for whatever the rest of the directors feel. I was thinking like around December 1st, it would be great for us to put together with CRNR a flyer that said the do's and don'ts on the Christmas trees and when it's collected, when it isn't, and a helpful one to the people in our community. Because I feel like it's kind of helter-skelter. Everybody's talking to each other. Have you heard what we were supposed to be doing? And then they get excited. And also, it would be nice to have a phone number for CRNR if something happened that they didn't get picked up. so that it doesn't come to necessarily us on our office, and then we have to return the call to CRNR. Anyway, that's a suggestion I have.
Well, I think, Arlene, we have a newsletter in between now and then. Yeah, is that what you're talking about? Putting something in the newsletter?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
What is the date of that next newsletter? Because Arlene's pushing closer to Christmas time.
that's true. Good thought.
I'll refer that to Nalani and Gino are working on the next newsletter right now, so it should be coming out in the fall, I believe.
What month in the fall? Do you know? September or
Is there one in November?
I'll refer
November?
that to Gino or Nalani.
So the fall newsletter will be out in September. And then we also have a newsletter that comes out just before the Christmas holiday in December. And we usually
There.
put information in both about the Christmas tree pickup.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir, Director Eccles.
I had a couple comments and questions. First, Scott, can you address back on our benchmarks on item number 3, notifying us about operational delays? We're looking for 95%. Where'd you come up with the percent of 95 versus say 100? I mean, to at least notify us?
Well, as I think it's 100% is, in my opinion, unachievable. So in my opinion, if you get something to 90 percentile, I think that's demonstrating good performance, and 95% is still on the very high end. So we know that there are going to be slips through the cracks. They're not going to be able to get to 100%, but still, if they can achieve 95%, in my opinion, we're satisfied. Now, if the board wants to go 100%, sure, we can do that if that's your pleasure. But in my opinion, 95% is demonstrates pretty good performance.
Okay, and just so I understand, it's them notifying us ahead of or when an operational delay happens. Is that like a
Right,
truck
so-
being out of service and whatnot?
Yeah, correct. That's very important for us, because the sooner we get that information, the sooner we can put that out in the public and let them know, hey, just please, we encourage their patience on this. A truck breakdown or personnel issues, once the public understands, gets that information, they understand, things happen. It's, but as long as we keep them informed, I think that will cut down on more people calling in.
Okay, and then on item number 7, right now it's give us an update on a timeline utilizing City of Newport Beach transfer. From what I'm hearing, this has been an ongoing topic of conversation for quite some time.
Mhm.
I mean, I might just suggest, I could give you a timeline. Doesn't mean it's worth anything. So I would like to see maybe more like an answer. I don't know how best to phrase it, but like, hey, give me a stepped plan of implementation.
Yeah.
A timeline's great. They say, oh yeah, in a year we'll address it. Well, that doesn't solve anything. It sounds like it's been out there for a long time. So I'd like to see a little bit more meat in that, saying, give us a step-by-step plan, not necessarily a timeline. So that's just one suggestion.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And then on item number 3, let's see. Oh wait, I'm sorry. No, item number 2. Looking back, it looks like the last, say, 3 years that I saw in the reports, each year has increased. For instance, started back in, I'll look at 17, 18 at 122, then it jumped to 270, and then jumped to 348 in the last reporting period. I see it's 174. That's certainly better, but I'd like to see it more look like that 122 back in 17 and 18 as a benchmark. Somewhere in that thing instead of 174. You're basing on a 50% off of this crazy COVID year, for instance, which we all know all sorts of stuff happened, and in fairness to them as well, that's it was just a crazy year. So I would like to see more like in around that 120, 130 complaint thing, based it on what was going on several years ago. But maybe there's some other reasons, Scott, you can address
Sure.
with that.
Sure. Well, the 122 is a full year. So what I'm looking at is 50% within 6 months.
Okay.
So if we get to 122 in another 6 months, great. We're on great. And so we get 50% of that 6 months, in my opinion, we're going the right direction. And hopefully within another 6 months, we could get down to 122. So that's the
Okay.
difference. That's why. But again, if you want to direct it to go 120, we can do that. But that was my philosophy. Why the 50%? Because it's a 6 month period, not a year period.
So if I, just so I understand then, so 50% down to 174, that to me would still, the 174 would still, so that's for 6 months, but 50% of the 348 was for a full year, right?
Correct. Correct. Yes.
Okay. So in my limited math here, that wouldn't it be then 50% of 174 over the next 6 months?
Sure. I guess you can, you can skin the cat any way you want to. Sure, we can do it that way. Sure.
Well,
Okay.
Scott, I think Dr. Eccles' question is a good one. It's just interpretation, either by or potential misinterpretation by CR&R and or anybody that reads this. So I think you ought to say what you want them to achieve in a fiscal year to clarify it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. That's kind of what I'm looking for. What if you still want to do it in the 6 months, which makes sense because that's what we're evaluating.
Right.
But I think that just needs to be cleaned up a little bit for fairness to them and anyone else paying attention,
Okay.
Hey, Scott, I have a
Yep.
comment. Didn't you already send that letter to CR&R for their evaluation? They agreed to it?
Well, I sent the benchmarks. It was the second attachment, in your software. We sent that over to CNR, so we can make some more adjustment and let the CR be advised that based on the board's comments, here are some changes we made to it, and then seek some more.
Then they'd have to agree to those also. They would have to come back with agreement.
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't think they have to agree. If they don't agree, doesn't mean we can't implement it. I mean, they're our customer. I mean, we're the clients. So
I'm just saying if you make any changes, you're gonna have to let them know what those changes are.
yes, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
We will definitely notify them of the change. Absolutely.
All right, that's all. Oh, and sorry, one last question, Scott. Going back to what Vice President Schaefer was discussing on the survey and all that, I assume, and I agree with the other directors about going through the ad hoc and all that. The board, will we at some point before that goes out get some input on that survey then?
Yes, of course, because the ad hoc committee will report back to the board.
Great. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
And Director Eccles, the actual, we'll hire someone to do the survey, and then between us, we'll discuss the questions that'll be a part of the survey.
Right.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So we'll get input into what the questions are and how they're, what the intent of the questions are, and then they'll do the survey.
Got it.
Scott, you said we will do 1,000 residents. In
Yes.
the past, I think we've done 500.
Yes. The last 2019 survey, we did 500. The 2016 survey, we did 1,000. Because this is what we're proposing is a significant change in behavior. We thought the more people we can survey, the better data we can obtain and share that with the board. And so we budgeted appropriately for 1,000 people. So it's budgeted appropriately.
Hey, Bob, just real quick. I think with the 3-cart, it's going to be such a big change. I think as a board and as staff, we need to consider as we get closer or we get near making decisions on this, we might want to have a public meeting just to discuss that topic, like we've done. And I think we did that with some of the organic stuff. We did it with the districting on the, so I think it's a topic that we might want to consider having a special public meeting on the topic eventually.
Well, if that's, again, that, if I may, that's, yes, I would agree. If the board decides to go a 3-card system, I concur that we would have to have a lot of town hall meetings like we did the organics, because it's a change behavior. But
Yeah.
again, if you don't, if you say, well, we're gonna say 2-card system, then I don't think it's necessary. But again,
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And town hall is that's the word I was groping for. So I appreciate you saying that.
Well, the fact of the matter is, when we went to the 2-card system, we told them that was the cat's banana, and you know, and the future of the industry is going to be 2-card system. So we've got a lot of explaining to do.
Yes.
Did you say, Bob? Did you say the cat's banana?
I think so. I've
Yeah,
been to
okay.
the doctor, so I may not be lucid.
Mr. President.
Mike, that's an old Midwestern expression, apparently.
I'm sure it is, Bob.
Mm.
Mr. President, when you're ready for public comment, Mr. Mosier's hand is raised.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, President Uten. I just wanted to follow up, although I'm not one of your trash customers, on Director Eccles' comments about the benchmarks. I noticed at the top of it, it says that it's the benchmarks for a 6-month period. It specifies what the period is. So I think in number 2, you definitely want to clearly specify the maximum number of complaints you want, not in an annual basis, but the number of complaints you want to see in that 6-month period.
Yep.
And then in number 3, I agree with Scott that 100% compliance is not likely, but I notice it does not say the time within which you want to be notified of the delays of service. That seemed to me that is important. If the district wants to be notified within 24 hours, it should say that. If it wants to be notified within 1 hour, it should say that. Just as a resident reading this, they would be in compliance if they notified the district a month later that there had been a delay. And I don't think that's what you intend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosher. Good comments.
Okay, any other comments or discussion from the board members?
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Mosher's comment about, again, the more specific, the better for everyone involved. So
Yep.
maybe
Yeah, I
just
think,
a little
yeah.
cleanup of this, and then I think it'll be good for them, us, and the public, just as specific as possible.
Yeah. We don't want to debate the what the meaning is, when we start getting citizen complaints,
Right.
if in fact we do get any citizen complaints.
Right.
Good comments, staff. Well, do any of the directors want to discuss this further? Yeah, and I think Mr. Mosher made a good point. I read this and I apparently didn't read the title, measures in the next 6 months. I think that ought to be, I went right down and read the 1 through 8 and missed that important interpretation about the next 6 months. So anyway.
The doctor just prescribed you some like Vicodin or something. It's understandable.
Yeah.
Some medication with a V.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all I need is something to turn my face red, but more red. Anyway, can we, what item are we on? We're on number 3. Any other discussion on item number 3? Thank you all. Scott, I appreciate you're putting this together for review, and I think the director's comments will help make it even better. So
Agreed.
can we go on to item number 4?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So this was a request by the board of directors to inquire how we communicate with CRNR. So staff put together, what I believe, our best communication practices, and we list there are 5 ways we communicate with CRNR. With the newest area or newest way we communicated, or the latest is we're now going to be doing some face-to-face time, where Nabila will be meeting with the operations route managers, along with their sustainability coordinator, and they will share information with staff, like on mechanical breakdowns, fleet units, missed pickups. So we think that will help in our communications, or enhance our communications with CNR. But if there's any other ways the board or members of the public can think how we can enhance our communications to CNR, we're all ears, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
I'm glad to see we still use telephones.
Yes, that's the old-fashioned way, but still very effective.
Well, I think the emphasis needs to be on, there definitely needs to be a strong emphasis between CRNR and Costa Mesa Sand District. But the at issue in the past has been customers trying to get through CRNR's processes. And is that addressed in number 1?
Yes, we believe that's the best way to get a hold of staff, even on the weekends, because we do monitor this technology, government outreach on the weekends. So because if they use the phone, they're just get an answer machine, and we won't get that. And so we highly encourage the residents to use the Gov outreach. That is the best effective way to get a hold of staff, even after hours.
I think that should be something that might be included in the survey, because there are a lot of not social media capable residents. And I would have to be explained how to use that particular thing, and only because I'm not used to using social media, and like Mike said, he's glad the telephone is still there. But anyway.
Mr. President?
Yes, Arlene.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment. Mike Carey is here representing CRNR. I'd like to hear him just have a comment if he has one, because I'd like to acknowledge that he is at our meeting, and now I think he'll be in a lot of our meetings, which will be very helpful on being able to communicate. Mike?
Thank you, Secretary Schaefer. Sure, we are committed to streamlining and improving the communication process between CRNR and the district. It is somewhat unique in that district staff communicates with our operations team, with our customer service team, with me, and with leadership. There's a lot of hands in the pot in the communication pipeline, and we're trying to streamline that so there's a go-to person where you can get answers and get direction and get results. I do believe that's been improving in the last couple of weeks. We've really got that down, and I just want to assure you that we're committed to providing the level of communication that you guys desire and deserve.
Thank you, Mike.
Again, I'd like to have this adequately explained on the website, so that even I could use this process. And there's a lot of people like me that didn't grow up with social media, and unless I use it periodically, which I don't, I mean, this particular service, it's hard to figure it out. So somehow we need to craft. I'm not sure the survey is the correct place, but it potentially could be in the survey for how best to improve these communications with the customer in the field and or with CSD, with our agency and or with CRNR. But I rest my point. But any other directors
Yes.
want
Yes,
to ask
President-
questions or
President Newton.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. We also could put that, like front page of our newsletter that's going to be going out twice before Christmas, twice before Christmas. That would be a good thing. Highlight that item.
Yeah.
Well, not only highlight how the item and what it's intended to be used for, but how to use it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Can we go on to item number 5 then?
Mhm.
Okay, item number 5 is a laundry list of 5 or 6 meetings that the CA Citizens Advisory Committee had scheduled, and so it's an item by item description of what will be covered in their meetings. Do any of the directors have comments on this process?
And Mr. President, if I could just add, these items aren't etched in stone. We do mention to the CEC and to the Chair Katz that we do have the flexibility to move items around. But our goal is still to discuss all these items on these next 2 pages, but the dates might change.
Scroll down to November, if you would, please. New programs. Somehow, my intention for item number 3 was by then to have a plan for achieving the SB 1383, and so provide comments and recommendations on new programs. I guess those new programs, what I'd like to do is have the plan completed, and those new programs then would be the substance for what the CAC talked about. Is that the intent, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, then I think we're together on that. Any other comments by any directors or discussion of any of the items? The CAC has a benefit of this. Well, yeah. Okay, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. We'll go on to item number 6 then. One of my favorite topics on today's agenda is the sewer system siphon evaluation. Scott, is Mark going to lead this?
Yeah, sure. I'll do a quick introduction, and then Mark's going to be giving the presentation. So to refresh the board's memory, a couple of years ago, we had a significant repair issue at the Bristol Street sewer siphon. And that repair really kind of opened our eyes to the rest of our sewer siphons in the district. Originally, we thought we had 10 siphons. I think Mark will tell you later that we have 8 after we do the evaluation. But the whole purpose of doing that evaluation is to determine, okay, what's the condition of our siphons? Are they like the Bristol sewer siphon? And if they are, what's the immediate action we need to take it on? So it was good. It was good policy that we did this evaluation. It really gave us a good information and direction on how to proceed with the siphons. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark, and he's going to give a brief overview of, explain what a siphon is, and then why we went and did the evaluation, what were the results of the evaluation, and then where do we go from here? So I'll turn it over to Mark.
Nolani, may I share my screen?
Yes, let me co-host you, Mark. Give me a second. Okay, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, directors. Thank you for allowing me to present this item. And Scott, thanks for introducing the topic. You saved me quite a few sound bites. But as you are, and as Scott mentioned, we actually hired a firm to conduct a study. But before I tell you the results, let me share that this is my chicken scratch. I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imagination, but what a siphon does, we as engineers, we want sewers to go straight and flow by gravity down to the wastewater treatment plant. But many times there's some type of an obstruction in the way, like a flood control channel, a very large metropolitan water pipeline, something that might either be too critical, too expensive, or some other reason why we can't relocate that obstruction utility. So what we implement is sewer agencies is what we call an inverted siphon. That's really the appropriate nomenclature for it. But what an inverted siphon does is the water comes into a pipeline that takes a dive down below the obstruction, goes past the obstruction, and when we get past the obstruction, the sewer then comes back up to a gravity flow system. Now, what we're doing is we're using the elevation difference between the top of, or the upstream side or upstream manhole to the downstream manhole. We're using that water surface differential to, one, push the solids that are in the sewage and increase the velocity such that we, from momentum, carry those solids from upstream to downstream. Because as low flow occurs, things settle out. And so agencies typically have to go in and conduct lots of maintenance on these pipelines, including cleanings. One thing that a lot of siphons may or may not have, and a lot of times engineers either neglect or choose to leave out of their design, is an air jumper. Because the gravity flow system has an air pocket on the top half of the pipe, when the sewage gets down to the siphon, there's got to be a way to air jumper that, I'll call it foul odor, from one side of the obstruction to the downstream side. So now that you know everything there is to know about siphons, let's talk about our 10 items. And rather than show you the chart, let me say that I'm just giving you a summary overview here. But let's start out with Bristol Street. That one was completed. That was the emergency work that was conducted back in, I believe it was 2019. At that time, we hired a firm to help us with the assessment. And here's the results. Of the 10 siphons, we found 8 were actually siphons. These last 2, Babb Street and Mendoza pump station influent lines, are actually ductile iron pipes. And so our design consultant, capital design consultant, and I moved these 2 projects over to the DIP project, and we'll get those as part of that project when appropriate to do so. But the remaining 7, I've broken them into 3 categories for several reasons. One, inverted siphons are very, very, very difficult to work on for several reasons. One, if we go under a storm drain channel, as an example, a lot of times there's groundwater or perch water, and that water then, if there's any defects, cracks, holes, anything in our siphon, that groundwater enters into our pipeline. And as long as water is entering into our pipeline, we cannot line or replace that pipe with an internal pipeline, I'll call it. So we can't reline those pipes. And so based on my review of the evaluations, I've broken these into 3 different categories because I believe these projects are going to be a lot more expensive than we anticipated. But the first 3 would be Autoplex Golf Course, and what's in there is a lot of cracks, a lot of infiltration. It needs a liner. And to do these 3, because Bristol Street, same thing, at Hotel Way, there's a hole in the pipe, there's infiltration, it needs a liner. South Coast Drive at IKEA, there's cracks, there's infiltration, it's going to need a liner. So what we have to do is we have to put a robot into the pipeline, and we have to grout inject the crack or the hole with some type of, I'll call it a bentonite mud or clay or something that basically fills up that hole or crack and basically stops the leak. Once we go the first leak, then the second leak, then the third leak, then once we dry that pipe, we have to vacuum out that water, get it completely dry, and then we can install a liner. And so these three are the most critical because they actually all have defects that is allowing water to infiltrate the pipeline. So my hope is that these first three, and that's probably the most critical three, get completed this year. In the second phase, I'm hoping to do in year 2 of our current fiscal year budget, Polarino at the flood control channel, and then Anton Boulevard at Park Center Drive. As you can see, item number 5, or the Polarino Siphon, has some point repairs and it needs a liner and it's got some infiltration. It's not as bad as these three, so I don't believe that's going to be as expensive, nor is it as critical to repair because it's got a much smaller infiltration stream. Anton, we've got some cracks. We need to install a liner. I can't tell that it's leaking or having infiltration, so I think that will fit in very nicely, but because of the cracks, I want to get a liner in that particular inverted siphon. And then the remaining 2 we would do in year 3, unless we find that we have budget remaining and maybe we can move 1 or 2 of these up into either phase 1 or year 1 or phase 2 or year 2. But Mesa Drive at Irvine, it needs a liner. But the reason why I pushed that one off is it's not really seeing infiltration right now or inflow, but it does need a liner. The problem we're going to have is when that project was designed and installed, the approach to the obstruction, we had a very steep approach, and then we had a very steep exit out of that obstruction. And so because it's so steep, we may or may not be able to get the liner across or around the bend. So if that is the case, we'll have to open excavate and then insert a liner through a pit along the siphon. So I wanted to put that one off because it's not as critical. I'd say there's minimal leakage, and so that's going to be the most difficult to assess and develop a design for. And then in Pine Creek at Adams Avenue, we appears to have 1 hole. We can probably get that one done pretty easily after addressing the more critical items. So that's the summary of our 10 items that we assessed, only 8 of which are siphons. And then based on the initial evaluation and what our consultant has provided us, we think it's going to be about 600 to 650, maybe 700,000 tops to do all those 8 items. So what I've proposed, and based on the allowable budget, as you recall, this is a very, very, very tight budget year. We're proposing to spend $250,000 this fiscal year and $300,000 in the second fiscal year. And then whatever we can't get done, we will either budget for and get completed in the third fiscal year under our new budget. So with that, I will conclude my report, answer any questions, take your comments or your suggestions, and consider anything you have to say.
Mr. President,
Director Eccles.
I just had a question mark on that last slide. I just want to make sure I understand the last 2 slides, I guess. But so the 250 and the 300 phase, what you called phase 1, would you anticipate 250 for just phase 1?
Yeah, that's our hope. And I may have to bring some money from year 2 into year 1. But the other reason why I had budgeted a little bit less is that depending on how complex the repairs are and how long they take, they may carry over a little bit into year 2 of our current 2-year fiscal budget. So I believe some of the money that's needed for those first 3 repairs may actually carry into year 2 of our fiscal budget. But when when the capital consultant and I actually start to study in detail what's required, we will update our estimates and we will bring that information back before your board of directors after reviewing it with my general manager.
And last question, just in general, timeline on, say the average timeline on the 3 projects in phase 1 to repair what we need to get repaired.
Yeah, right now we're shooting to complete, or my goal is to complete 3 projects in the fiscal year. I have a lot of, we have a lot of capital work to get done this year. So I think it's very ambitious to get 100% done. And as you recall, we probably haven't traditionally finished all of our projects. So I'll say I've developed a huge goal for myself to get every project done this fiscal year that's slated for this fiscal year. But because we haven't traditionally done it, I left a little bit of wiggle room, but that is my goal, Director. And then likewise, my goal would be to get the next couple of them done in the following fiscal year.
Ambitious goals only get ambitious results done. So I'm in full agreement. Thank you, Mark.
Mark, like the 2 of them you determined were not siphons. They just go under something and somebody assumed they were siphons?
Yes. My understanding, and I will be honest, I did not review the videotapes of those 2 set pipe segments prior to this, but my understanding is the reason why we thought they were ductile or siphons is because they were constructed of ductile iron. And you're right, they just went under some type of, I think it's a water line. One of them was a water line, and I don't know what the second obstruction was.
Well, Mendoza goes under a channel.
Okay.
A channel next to it, and they just happened probably to build the pump station deep enough so that it didn't need to be a siphon. It just went under something.
Yeah, my thought is, and I know that station is older, but based on what I know after almost 40 years of engineering, I probably, if I were to do this station over again, probably would have used a different material selection than ductile iron pipe. But I understand why we used it back then.
You're well aware of the rainy season, so work will probably be more difficult in the rainy season, especially if these lines are have infiltration, groundwater seeping into them. So you need to get started on these ASAP.
Yeah, our plan is to design them, I'll say by the fall, bid over the winter season,
Okay,
and then start construction. I'm hoping in the spring. And that way we got 3 or 4 months of active construction work to get these completed. Again, that's my goal based on difficulty, what we run into, other things.
Sure.
It could carry over a little bit.
Okay.
Mr.
Any
President, I have
directors
Mr.
have it?
Mosher. Sorry,
Oh,
we have public comment from Mr. Mosher.
do any of the directors have any further questions? And then Jim, I'll get to you then.
I just want to make a comment.
Oh, go ahead, Arlene.
Mark, I thought you did a great presentation, very understandable, very detailed, and I really appreciated that.
You're welcome, Director.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, President Newton. From Mark's description at the beginning, it seems to me that these inverted siphons are essentially the same as the U-shaped traps that each of us has under our kitchen and bathroom sinks. And so if they're at all like that, I assume that they're constantly filled to the brim with sewage that is waiting to flow out through the low end.
Yep.
So when he speaks of infiltration, are we also suspecting that these siphons are leaking sewage out into the environment? And if so, have any idea how much might be leaking out? And then second,
Go ahead, Jim,
Second,
finish your
yes,
question.
yeah, second, I was intrigued by his explanation of the air jumper that is at the top. So I'm number one, I'm wondering if all of our siphons have the air jumper. And number two, if like the traps under my kitchen sink, this occasionally clogs, is the air jumper route intended to be an alternate route for the sewage to get around the obstruction? Or is that not at all its purpose? So, thank you.
Good questions. Let me state that typically the groundwater, Mr. Mosier, is above our level of our gravity sewer. I will say you are correct in that to push the solids and the water around the obstruction, it is a full pipe, and we typically, sometimes we may downsize. So let's say it's a 12-inch gravity sewer, we might drop down to a 10 or an 8 to help increase the velocity and push any solids through the system. So it is a full pipe, but because typically our sewers are deep enough, our gravity sewers are deep enough, any water level that is created by the obstructions, mostly channels, as President Newton pointed out, infiltration comes into our pipe, not out of our pipe. That's not 100% absolute, but whenever you have, I'll say, gravity systems, there's very, very, very low pressure in those pipelines. It's not like a water pipe or what's coming out of your faucet, because as you know, it's the water level that creates the pressure. But typically what we found on each of these when the contractor assessed them was water is coming into our pipe, not out of our pipe. So that was, I think, your first question. Second question, the air jumper is not meant to be an overflow. They're typically not large enough, nor do they need to be that large to, I'll say, transfer flow over the obstruction. It's really to move the air or the foul odor down past the obstruction into the wastewater treatment plant. Now, not every one of our siphons have an air jumper. Sometimes, for the sake of cost, we eliminate or decide not to build the air jumper for several reasons. Our sewage might be very, very, very fresh. If that's the case, there's usually minimal odor, and we don't worry about odors getting out into the community and causing a problem. If it's I'll say a sewer at the very downstream end of our system, and the sewer starting to get septic, yeah, we'll want to have an air jumper in our system, because we want to be the good neighbor. There are options. We could add chemicals. We can do certain things to help with alleviating those odors if there is no air jumper. I have not evaluated these 10 locations to determine if there's an air jumper. I will also say sometimes the air jumper does not go over the obstructions. Sometimes it's just a parallel pipe, a smaller parallel pipe, but it doesn't come in where the sewer comes in. It comes up higher in the manhole, then dives down, goes under with the sewer pipes. But I haven't conducted the evaluation to understand which ones have air jumpers, which ones don't. But no overflow. But it's a good thought that from an incidental perspective, I guess it would transport some sewage. If we had a stoppage, it would transport some sewage from one end to the other. But that being said, they're not usually big enough to do that. But that's also why Steve Cano, our wastewater superintendent, really one of his jobs is to focus on the siphons, and they go in there quite a bit to do those cleanings on the siphons. I don't know the cleaning frequency, but they're usually done a little more frequency than normal gravity sewers.
So Mark, they're probably hot spots. My suspicion is that none of them have air jumpers. Orange County Sand District figured out that none of their siphons had, or relatively few of their siphons had jumpers. These are very old systems that I don't think that technology was in play at the time.
Yeah, thank you for the clarifications.
Any other directors' comments, or can we move on to the next item? Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. So the next item, it's my pleasure to present to you, and I'm very excited to present to the board and the public, our redesigned website. And I'm going to have Gina Terriano to give an overview of the website. She was the primary person responsible for seeing the new contract going out to bid for finding a qualified vendor, executing the contract, implementing the contract, administering the contract, making sure all the important contents are in the website. And she's going to give you a brief overview of the new redesigned website. I want to mention that we have added some new pages to the website. For example, we have like an administration page under governance. We have a new engineering page. We also have a history page so people can learn about the history of the district. So a lot of exciting new information on the website, and we hope it's easier to navigate, to find what they're looking for. So I'm going to turn it over to Gina. She's going to give a brief overview of our new website.
Thank you, Scott, and good morning, members of the board. So I'm happy to share with you our newly designed website today. As outlined in the staff report, the district worked with Revise, who is an established municipal website designer that has been in business for over 20 years, and they've launched about 1,300 government websites nationwide. In our comparison of website vendors, Revise provided the most modern and user-friendly design while managing to provide services at the same cost as our previous vendor, which is at a total of $6,000 per year for a 5-year period. So without further ado, I'm going to just give a little overview of the website and some of our key features. So as you can see, this is our homepage. Starting down in the corner here, you can see we have an alert box. And this highly visible window can be filled with any urgent or emergency messaging for the public. As you can see, you can even include a link here for people to read more. So if I click there, it takes me to further information, in this case about our reopening.
Gina, can we ask questions as you go along, or do you want to wait till the end?
You can ask questions as I go, that's fine.
Well, on this page, it would be nice to be able to click on the board study session and go right to that, but I don't believe that's yet possible.
So yes, so right here where you see the meetings, if you click on the meeting, it pops up the information, the agendas, as well as the joining information right here.
Okay, well, I didn't find that to be the case, but I'll check it out again. I hunted and hunted for the calendar finally.
Oh, sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yes, so this alert box can be closed. You'll see that it follows you down the page as you're scrolling. So it's just a good way to get information out to the public for anything important. To close it, you just click on the little X and it goes away. Up here, I wanted to draw your attention to the translation option. There are over 80 languages that the website can be translated into, and that is provided through Google Translator. You can see here we have a sliding background image just to add a little bit of movement to the page, and these can be changed out as we wish.
Gina, I'm sorry, I missed it. Can you go back to the translate for just a second and pop it up?
Sure.
This is a really minor thing, I think, but I have to bring it up because I have family members that are Filipino.
Yes.
And they speak Tagalog.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of Filipinos in our community, and I just thought it was strange that we have Zulu and Macedonian, but we don't have Tagalog.
You know, for some reason, it's listed as Filipino here, but yeah, Tagalog is the language.
I am so sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't see that on mine. Yes, I did. There it is. Okay, never mind. You can disregard my comments. By saying Filipino, that's good enough, I think. I beg your pardon.
Director Schaefer, sorry for interrupting. Go ahead, Gina.
That's okay.
Thanks, Bob.
Well, going back to the meeting section over here, as I demonstrated a second ago, you can click on any of the meetings here, and you'll see the meeting information pop right up as it's available. So it does take a click to get to the agenda, but it's pretty quick to navigate. And so in addition to that, down here is our quick link section. So these are meant to be the most frequently visited web pages on the website. I wanted to mention that we did just add this meeting agendas link right here per a request from the public, and also to make sure that we are in compliance with California state law. So this link right here brings you to, oops. Oh, well, it looks like I need to fix that, but it is meant to bring you to Board Docs. And so that should take you to our agenda management system where you can see all of our agendas. These are just all of our other main web pages that people frequently visit. Trash information, large item pickup. Those are the most frequently visited web pages on our site. And then scrolling down here, this is our news section. And so this is where we can feature any press releases or new information. You can see we have our new website press release right here, our reopening information, and you can scroll on to see more. You can also click on see all news, and that'll bring you to a web page with all of our past news items. So people can go back and read further back. And then below here is a social media section. You can see we also have our social media links in the top right corner, but we have them again down here along with a stream of our recent social media posts. So it's just another reminder for people to follow us on social media and check for updates. And then,
oh, I'm sorry. I have a question. Director Uten is embarrassed to ask this because he doesn't use social media, but I have a question. See the little blue guy over on the left?
yes.
Yeah.
Can you, I hit that accidentally. Can you explain what that does?
So this is actually for ADA compliance. If you click on it, you'll see there's various options to adjust the way that the website looks.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is very common. A lot of government and even private sector websites use this just to allow for some flexibility.
So that symbol, that blue symbol, I hadn't thought about it, but that just kind of looked like, handicap placard. Or, I mean, people recognize that for special needs then.
Yes.
That's fabulous. That is terrific. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure, and that stays on the website no matter which page you go on. It'll always be on the left side.
Yeah, fantastic.
And so just down here, these are our different statistics that we can change, but it just shows some of our key statistics and highlighting our functions as a district.
That's good.
Everything is pretty standard down here: address, office hours, and contact. Typically, you'll find on the bottom of the web page on most websites. So that's standard. And then bring us back to the top, you'll see our main menu items. We've broken them down into 6 main areas of topics. So under who you are, you'll find general district information, as well as our departments, those specific departments. Under governance, you'll find information about the board and the CAC, along with our policies and records. And then we have our 2 main functions, trash and recycling and sewer, right up here very prominently. And underneath, you'll find all all web pages related to specific programs or topics of interest. And then next we have news and publications. This is just press releases, newsletters, any communications that we have to the public would be found here. And then lastly, contact us, giving another opportunity for the public to find out how to best contact us. And so I did want to show, because of President Uten's request about our GoGov app, I just wanted to demonstrate that right under here, service requests, this is where you would click to get to that. But I also want to show it is an option on our quick links as well. And I think down here again, at the bottom of the page. So there's several ways to access our online request system. And this is what it looks like. So this is accessible on our website. It's also an app that can be downloaded onto your cell phone. But the way it works is essentially you would choose if you have a solid waste or wastewater request, issue, question. Let's say you want to schedule a large item pickup. You can go down here, click large item collection, and then you'll be asked to enter the location or the address. You can select where you want it picked up, the items that you want picked up, the quantity. You have to indicate if you have a dumpster and any other details. And then you simply click submit, and that goes to district staff to take care of.
Mr. President?
Dr. Eccles.
Gina, great work on this. I love it. One cosmetic request and one other request. The first on the home page, where you've got all those nice pictures, and it definitely adds something to the website. But the you know, the middle of it's obscured by, of course, the protecting public health, which is all good stuff. I'm just wondering if that can be that statement can be adjusted somewhere so as not to just block, especially when I'm on my cell phone. That thing, not that I need to see our pictures, but someone else, just maybe a quick adjustment on that might be possible. And then my second request would be on the governance. When you get to the board of directors, each one of us are listed, and a member of the public can email us. As someone who's written quite a few letters to various government agencies, I hate having to write to each one or type in each email address and other websites. Can we add a function where it just said email all directors?
Yes, we can definitely do that. Sure.
Awesome. Because very rarely are they going to want to just talk to me or someone else. It's usually all of us. So yeah, if that could be done, that'd be great. That's all I had.
Yeah, yeah, Bob, I'm sorry. I had that same thought, Brett, about that message right in the middle of all these great pictures.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. The other thing I had, the word governance. If I'm a general member of the public and I want to address the board of directors, I think I would probably first go to who we are. The word governance, I'm not sure that strikes a familiarity with the public in general.
Yeah.
Is there another term we could put there, or is governance what we need to use?
I believe it was taken from just looking at some other government organizations and seeing mostly what other agencies use. It seemed to be pretty common, but it is changeable if we wanted to change it.
I don't know how everybody else feels, but again, I knew what governance was, although I didn't think about I'm glad we have the CAC and the board listed there. I really like Brett's suggestion about making it an all-inclusive email. I guess though we need to be careful that as directors, we don't use that all encompassing email, because that could be a Brown Act violation. It has to be something just for the public, but I'm not asking you to change it now, but could we give some thought to maybe a different title other than governance?
If I may add a comment, governance, I do believe board of directors governance is the appropriate word, because when you think of governance, governance is the board of directors. That's why when if you look at the Special District Leadership Academy, they have a specific module on governance. And what do they talk about governance? They talk about board of directors and how they work collaboratively together, how they work well together. So when you click on governance, it should relate to the board policy, the policymakers, which is the board. So in my opinion, I think the governance is the appropriate title for board
Okay.
directors in CAC. So
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think people, if they don't know what governance means, they're probably going to click on it to see what it means. I mean, to see what's there. So
sure.
it's kind of a mixed bag, I think.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is we could use boards of directors as the title and move the CAC committee information, to some other boards of directors is a more direct way for citizenry to know how to find us. We just happen to have a CAC committee, and if we didn't have it, it would probably be called boards of directors.
I'd like to make a comment. As we look at this on the board here, it says right here, home, and it says governance, but then it explains the governance. It says right here that we govern board of directors and so forth. So I think it's self-explanatory through that.
Well, I think if they happen to go that route, right?
Mr. President,
Director Eccles.
just as a follow-up to Vice President Schaefer and Secretary Schaefer's comments, anyone who's got younger kids or grandkids, they're like, click it and go. They're not going to go searching around. I might just suggest, and I understand what Scott said about governance, but what if we put in parentheses board of directors next to it or something like that? Just make it as user friendly as possible. Just an idea to where, because I agree that governance, we all know what it means, and a lot of people know what it means, but a lot of people don't, and just trying to make it user friendly.
We'll look into that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other directors discussion comments or so we have a couple hands raised.
I'm sorry, Bob, just a congratulations to Gina and the rest of
Yeah.
the staff. It really is slick. I mean, great job done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it'll take me a while to get used to it. Everybody likes change, but nobody likes to be changed. So Gina, I think you've done a great job.
Well put together.
Whose hand was raised first? Okay, Mike Carey, go ahead.
Thank you, President Newton. Just as a resident, I'd like to commend staff for the look and feel of the new website. I think it's very user-friendly and intuitive, both on the desktop version and on the mobile version, which is kind of difficult to do, to get both of them to be very user-friendly. I think you've done a great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Mosier?
Thank you, President Newton. First of all, I at least was not confused by the word governance. Although if you just substituted the word board without saying board of directors, if it said just board, I would also understand that. So I don't really think that's much of an issue. I appreciate the staff adding the direct link to the agendas. But I think there are continuing problems with the box about meetings and listing them. While Gina was talking, went back to try to work the website, and I now understand why President Newton and I were unable to use that to find the current agenda for this meeting easily. And the reason is, as many of you may recall, in the early days of the internet, when something was clickable, was a link, it was usually in a different color and underlined so that you could see it. The internet has become much more graphical, but as you can see, problem with the meetings box right at the moment is blank, so there's some problem with it. Number two, as Gina was moving the cursor around, you find something you can click on. The cursor normally turns from the cursor into a little finger symbol that means click here. When the meeting box was showing the meetings, which it's not at the moment, but when it was, when you pointed at the meetings, the cursor did not change into a finger. So President Uten and I, trying to use that list, had no idea that those meetings were clickable. So the vendor needs to be told that there are problems with this box. And if something is clickable, it needs to be clearly indicated by the cursor changing that it is clickable. So there is a little problem there that needs to be worked out. Thank you.
I haven't researched the site entirely, but I have a little cheat sheet that gives me the staff's telephone numbers or extensions. Is that on the website, Gina?
No, we don't have the direct extensions for each staff member. We prefer to have them go through our phone auto receptionist, and it'll direct the calls as needed.
Okay.
Mr. President, I wanted to make a comment. Gina, that was a great job. The only thing that I would suggest, just like a lot of our directors have, to take that middle part and move it to the side, because I love the pictures, but I can't see them all because of this comments on there. The comments are good, but I just say, I think the pictures are worthwhile. Thank you.
I will definitely look into seeing if we can move that around. I know it's part of the design of the homepage, which I don't know that we can alter, but I will get with the vendor and see if we can make some adjustments. And as Mr. Mosier stated, make sure that the items appear to be clickable in the meeting section.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this item? I think you've done a great job, Gina. It'll all work out in a few weeks. So you're 98, 99% of the way there.
Thank you.
Can we go back to the agenda, please? Okay, any item number 1 under D is, are there any other oral communications or director's comments at this time?
I just wanted to let everybody know that the seat A is up for grabs, and 9 people are running for Joe's seat, and she's running again. And they will be counting the ballots toward the end of this week. So by next week, we ought to know what's going on. And then I also wanted to comment on ISDOC, that I hope a lot of you tune into ISDOC next week. On the 29th, we will be having, actually not in person, but just a regular Zoom. And this will be with the Great Park, which ought to be very good. The director of planning, and he's the director also for the Great Park. So he could explain different items that are coming up and what's going on Great Park. And then also we have Placentia Library, which is going to be on there too. And Evelyn Contreras, and she's going to be highlighting special districts. She's our highlight for special districts. And then we also have a new associate person, which is former Senator Dick Ackerman, and I'll be introducing him too. So that's it. It's at lunchtime, 11:30.
Any other director's comments or communications?
Yeah, real quick, Bob. I don't know if you all saw on the news this morning that South Bay, LA Sanitary had a 17 million gallon sewer spill off the coast.
No.
And it kind of harkened back to our big one at the dunes. I cannot imagine, and Bob, you and Mark probably are more familiar. 17 million gallons of sewage. That's huge.
Mm.
At least it seems huge to me. I guess it was an outfall pipe that was about a mile off the coast. And, so
yeah, they basically have a short outfall and long outfall like Orange County Sand District. And,
yeah,
and debris clogged up their screens, and they couldn't get spare equipment on quick enough, and then they clogged up. So they chose to go out 17 million gallons out the short outfall.
Mm.
Yeah, it's closed all the beaches. How long does it typically take to clear that out or to have the beaches open again?
3 days.
Okay.
The pathogenic microbes don't do very well when there's no food around, and so they generally die before 3 days. And I don't think there's been any sampling results released yet on, but the health department will keep it closed for a minimum of 3 days.
Okay.
Generally, that's a maximum also.
Closing the beaches in the middle of a heat wave is not a good idea.
Mm.
3 days or not, Mike, I don't know about you, but I'm not going surfing on those beaches this weekend.
I haven't surfed in that area in 30 years, Brett. I totally agree. I'm not going in that bay. I had a real question for Scott. Hey, Scott, with the governor's recommendation about 15% decrease in water usage, are we mandated, or do we have any restrictions on or changes, I guess, in our water operation, or do we have to do anything?
Well, the only areas that we use water is at the facilities and
jetting.
Well,
Cleaning.
but that we use that we get those from the fire hydrants and need the water. We cannot cut our water 15% to clean systems, so we can't do that. But but at our grounds, I mean, we have the district yard is remember LEED Platinum certified.
Right.
It's all drought tolerant landscaping. Right now, we're not watering, or we're doing very minimal watering here at Q, because we're gearing up to redesign and install drought tolerant landscape here at HQ. So no, the voluntary restriction does not impact us.
Okay.
Orange County Sand District is doing a study right now about lowering residential use, which this bill directly addresses. I think whoever the sponsor wants us to go to average of 45 gallon per capita per day. And they're already experiencing corrosion in the bottom of their sewers based on the last couple droughts, where they went from 265 down to 185 low. So they're below the historical liner that they have, and they have a couple of big rehab projects. They've also sent a letter objecting to this bill. So that was a discussion we had yesterday at the groundwater replenishment system. They're looking for water, and for the groundwater replenishment system, and I don't particularly like the way they're being creative to find water just to get that project going. But anyway, news at 11. Any other directors or comments?
Mr. President?
Director Eccles.
2 comments, I guess, actually going back to our website for Gina, and just in general, this Friday, I believe you guys have your liaison meeting with the other school board and their staffs, and the city and their staffs. When I was on last night, quite frankly, I didn't go on this morning, but some little bit more detailed information maybe on our website for those meetings about any agendas. I didn't see like an agenda for that or a location for that. I got to tell you, that's one of the few times for a member of the public can sit in on a, agency type meeting.
Yeah.
Looking at the agenda, that's great stuff. So I would just ask maybe a little bit detail for a member of the public who could be a part of that. And then as you reminded me, one of the things we were just talking about was the governor and the water reductions and all that stuff. The last time we went through this, the school board, I mean, if you guys ever drove around in any of the school sites, it was a dust bowl because they didn't water any of their school sites. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
I would just request that either President Uden or Vice President Schaefer maybe just ask the school board or the school staff about their plans for that, because not only do you have the users of those sites, but just the aesthetics of our city just goes to crap when these things happen. So last time they were caught off guard and it just wasn't planned properly. So maybe drop that into your conversations. And that's all I had.
Thank you, sir. Any other directors need to make comments, or if not, I appreciate all the input. Been a very good working meeting, and I'm going to deem this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good, safe weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job. Good job, Bob.
Bye-bye.
Good.